Welcome to the fourth and the final part of the short story, Fitted for the Master's Use. May exclaimed, "This driver is the most unfriendly person I've ever met in my entire life. God, please grant me patience with him." At around midday, May and Sophia had an emotional parting. May thought she saw a tear in the driver's eyes as he carried her luggage to the car. The journey to the airport this time around was about 1 hour. On dropping her to the airport, the driver handed her an air ticket and 2 phones, those were hers, and left without saying a word. He seemed to have disappeared into thin air. She realized that she had not even got a chance to take the car's number plate. "Oh dear, how will I ever report this to the authorities?" she moaned. Then she wondered which authorities. Was it going to be South African or Kenyan? She could approach, but first she needed to get the familiar grounds of her country. Quickly, she went through the process of boarding the plane and was seated in the waiting lounge number 15. She thought she saw a familiar face, but before she could react, the person motioned her not to show any signs of recognition, and she seemed to have understood very fast. Her fear were the 2 men in black suits and black specs who had accompanied the person she saw. Once more, she confronted her fear by reciting a verse from the book of Isaiah. Soon, there was a call to board the plane, and May was on her flight back home. She breathed a sigh of relief. Using her phone that she had since put together, she called a taxi to her home when she reached Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. She thought she did not want to involve Kevin in another mysterious encounter. Apparently, when Kevin had brought her back home on the day of her travel to South Africa, they had agreed that she would use the back gate while Kevin would drive out to confuse those who were tracking them. Their plan had worked successfully, except that Kevin had had no courage to go back to the house for 3 days. He had feared for his life. May told the driver to use the expressway as it would be faster. Within 20 minutes, she was entering her residence. The security guard opened the gate, and May breathed a sigh of relief as the taxi edged into her compound. As she was alighting from the car, she noticed 2 men in black with black hoods standing right beside the closed gate and the other one right beside her garage. Her strength almost failed her, but she pretended not to have seen anything and hurriedly walked towards her door, opened the door, and once inside, she shouted Kevin's name. "He's not here," a voice came from under the stairs. "Collins?" She went and fell on him, her body shaking like that of a person with a fever of 40 degrees centigrade. "Thank God you're here. What's happening? Who are all these people?" He told her not to worry. Everything would be fine because she was now safe. But her heart would not stop racing. Collins led her to the study room and showed her a video on the computer. "What? This cannot be true," muttered May. "Yes, May Jones, it is," he responded emphatically. "How did you get this information?" she inquired, worry and fear written all over her beautiful face. "I will tell you, but first we must vacate this place as fast as possible." Collins took out his phone from his pocket and made a phone call. Soon there was a commotion at the gate. 2 vehicles arrived, and one parked at the front side of her house and the other near her garage. They started interrogating the men in black who were in the compound. Soon, a quarrel ensued, and everyone in the compound got very busy in it. A week later, May and Collins were busy discussing the major escape. Collins had kept track of May's movement from the time she left for South Africa to the time she came back. He had known that some men had been sent to guard her residence and wait for her to get in. They were to keep her captive for a while as they executed their operations. He had then timed her coming and come to her place, saying that he needed to pick up something from her house. The fact that he had a copy of her door keys convinced these people that his mission was genuine. Once he entered the house, he was able to study the surroundings using his intelligence training, and he confirmed that he had seen a part of the wall that was quite low. Anyone could jump over it. Instantly, he knew how he would get May out of that compound. He had then invited a few policemen who were his friends to distract the men who had been kept to ensure that May never left her residence. That night, she was supposed to be done away with. She was supposed to disappear for a long, long time. "What? They have been arrested!" shouted Collins. "Thanks be to God." "Oh, glory to God!" May joined him in shouting. She had started getting tired of staying in another apartment as other people occupied her comfortable residence. Kevin was just glad that his aunt was now safe and that they could go back home. "Just one question, Mr. Collins. Why didn't you call me to stop going to my house the day I came? I knew you'd not pick my call after the anger I saw when I tried to stop you from going to the conference." Collins responded very relaxed. "Anyway, I thought I was going to lose you again," Collins exclaimed. "Me? When was the first time you had to lose me?" May wondered. "When you got involved in an accident at the age of 17, he responded. "But you didn't know me then," she wondered. "Well, I didn't, but God had put it in my heart that one day I would find a special person in Kenya. And from the first time I saw you..." Kevin started clapping as May felt embarrassed. "Please, let's change the subject," May intercepted. "So what was this about my being removed from the scene?" "Well, I had been tracking your movement for a while," Collins continued. "Tracking? I did not realize that, but I wondered why you kept showing up more frequently around me. I should have you arrested," she joked. "Don't worry, May Jones Riziki. You already arrested me." "How?" "You have arrested my heart, my poor little heart." They all burst out into laughter as Kevin walked in with a box. He asked May to open the box. "And could you please read it out?" he instructed her. "To a special aunt and soon to become from Kevin and Collins," she read out hesitatingly. "Oh, thanks, Kevin. Now what am I soon to become?" she inquired, her eyes becoming moist. They told her to be patient. She would soon know. Then they continued to narrate to her what had happened. The car May Jones had seen trailing Kevin and her to the airport on her journey to South Africa was part of a plot hatched by some of her colleagues to get rid of her. She interrupted the narration by telling Collins and Kevin that she had seen that car a few times, once at the parking space of a supermarket where she normally went to shop. The occupants had parked beside her, and as she came back to her car, they had greeted her. She had not seen anything abnormal with that gesture. Then the night before she was to travel, she had been drawing her curtains. Then she checked outside her window, which overlooked the main gate, and she saw a similar car parked outside her gate for a while. And then the driver had driven away without coming into the compound. On inquiry, the security had told her that the occupants said they had lost their way. Therefore, on the travel day, when she saw the same car outside, she knew something was wrong and had to act wisely. That was how she outdid them, by coming back home and changing strategy. Kevin then continued the narration that once she had left, he had called Collins, who had given him the idea to drive to Kitengela and mislead those who were trailing them. Collins took up the conversation to tell his side of the story and what the police investigations had revealed thus far. A month before the conference, Collins said he had forgotten to pick his mobile phone as he left the office 6 o'clock one evening. he had come in and heard some voices. Quietly, he had crept to the door, which they had left slightly ajar. He had always been suspicious of two of his colleagues, especially as they never contributed any views during office briefs anymore, and it had taken a lot to convince them to attend May's party. He had therefore decided to investigate what was going on with them. He had noticed them becoming secretive in their conversations. So that evening, he had had them plotting of a way for them to get May out of the way because she was blocking them. First, they were to track all the meetings she was to attend. They had got wind of the South African meeting, but they did not want her to go for it because they felt incapable of harming her outside the country. However, the day they learned she was leaving, they decided that since one of them was also going for it, they would come up with a plot to handle her. Fortunately, that time May had booked her own flight, so they could not travel in the same flight. The idea was that when she arrived at the conference, one of her colleagues would act as a room attendant. Getting the right opportunity, he would serve her with tea laced with a sleeping drug. They would then hack into her mobile phone and laptop to access documents that contained the passcode for the classified information they needed to blackmail the board of the company. Since May took over the directorship of her docket, she had blocked all avenues of financial mismanagement by her vigilance and extraordinary knowledge in computer operations, which her predecessor had not been able to block completely. May would have then been accused of leaking private information and would be jailed for several years as they carried out their mischief with the finances. Having that knowledge of the attempt to frame May, Collins had tried stopping her from attending the conference. By the time he got wind of the plan to be executed in South Africa, May Jones had already made travel arrangements. He therefore reached out to his long-term friend and partner in his private intelligence firm to protect May. That is how she had ended up being picked from the airport by a person who took her to the hideout. The colleagues who were to frame her had waited in vain for her at the conference center. Collins had also sent Mercy Tabela, a private investigator, to help keep May safe during her journey in South Africa. May had once seen Mercy visit their office to see Collins, but they had not talked much. Therefore, when she saw her at Durban Airport, she tried communicating with her, but Mercy had motioned her not to show that they knew each other. Mercy was aware that the two men dressed in black had trailed her and thought she could sell May out. May's phone rang, and seeing a number with a South African code, she excused herself to pick it, stopping the conversation briefly. The caller sounded very excited. "Hello, am I talking to May Jones? This is Sophia," she said. "Hello, Sophia. So nice to hear from you." May responded equally excited and put her on the loudspeaker. They talked for about 10 minutes, with Sophia telling her how their short interaction had positively changed her life. She was now close to her God as she had kept reading the Bible May had given her. For a moment, May thought about her Bible that she had treasured all her years since her grandmother gave it to her. They concluded by saying that they would organize for a face-to-face meeting one day soon. When she was through with conversing with Sophia, Collins appreciated May for the good job she had done on Sophia by encouraging her to pursue her goals in spite of the challenges that she was facing. He then continued to narrate what had happened by revealing how he had come to May's house to get her out, considering that he had seen some strange men holding guard there. It eventually came out that the guard who had been replaced during May's party some nights before had found a way to convince the new ones to allow these strange people into the compound in the guise that May had requested for more security. Anyway, all the masterminds have been arrested and the investigations are going on, concluded Collins. "Allow me to get some water for all of us." My throat is dry, he said. No, Uncle, I shall get the water, Kevin intercepted, addressing Collins with a sly smile. Uncle, what are you talking about, Kevin? You children of nowadays have no respect, May rebuked Kevin. Kevin walked to the kitchen and brought some juice and served his aunt first. She was so thirsty, and with one gulp, one sip, the water was through in her glass. She then had someone tap her from behind. She turned to see what he was showing her. Something was happening outside her window, and he wanted her to see it. When she turned to go back to her seat, Collins was on his knees in front of her. May Jones Riziki, will you marry me and be my heartbeat? My good listeners, that brings us to the end, and viewers, that brings us to the end of the short story. I hope you can enjoy the food behind me. God bless you for listening.